Okay, hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. So if you are new to this channel, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe as you watch. Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about how to do hip padding, how to hip pad the hip of a dress. That means, what it means is that you want to increase the hip line, so it gives an illusion of an increased hip line. So let us continue. Hi guys, so before you start your hip padding, remember the fabric you're using. Don't forget, because the hip pad is supposed to increase the hip line by at least 3 inches. That's for the natural hip line. That's for those that want to do natural hip padding. It will increase the hip line by at least 3 inches. So if you want to do, before you start your hip padding, remember that the fabric that you're going to use, keep an extra as in you add 3 inches to the hip of the person when doing your measurements. Please don't forget, add 3 inches to the hip of the client before starting, as in before taking your measurements, so that by the time you put the hip pad foam, it balances up. But for the lining, you use the actual measurement for the lining. Okay, so that everything balances. The waist and round knee, everything is going to be okay. Just the hip area, keep an extra keep an extra 3 inches before you as you are taking your measurements. So actually, for me, I usually make it look natural. I don't like it to look artificial, so I use the person's measurements to do the hip padding. So let's start. So for my client, her waist is 37, her hip is 48, and the round knee is 20. So we are going to be using the hip pad. We're going to start with a distance, a 20-inch. We're going to first mark out 20 inches in length. So let us start. So that 20 inches is actually the round knee. That's the round knee, sorry, the waist to knee distance that we're using. 20 inches. Okay, so the hip distance I'm using, waist to hip line I'm using is 10 inches. So we're going to mark it 10 inches. Then um the hip pad is not going to end at the knee. We're going to bring it up a bit by 2 inches. So we're also going to mark it 18 inches. So now let's take our measurements. So we're going to be using the actual measurements. We're not going to be adding any allowance. So the actual measurements for this client is waist 37. So 37 is 9.25. Her hip line is hip 48. So that is 12. And her round knee is 40. That's 10. So now that we've gotten it, we're going to connect the points together. You can use your hip curve. You can try to use your hip curve, or your French curve, or your hip curve. If you cannot connect it with your hands. Okay, so now that we've gotten these measurements, we continue. Now, remember that the hip distance is 10 inches that we're using, right? And we do our darts most times, our waist darts, we'll do them most times at 4 inches. So we mark 4 inches from the center front. Remember, this is the center front. Now our hip pad is not going to be starting exactly from the waist. Like I told you, that it's not going to be ending exactly at the knee. So it's not going to start exactly from the waist too. We're going to mark 1 inch away from the waist. So it's going to be ending 2 inches away from the knee and starting 1 inch away from the waist. So these are our measurements. Okay, so now let's get our points. Let's connect our points. So if we all notice, the beginning point is sharp and towards the end it's curved. That's the idea. So because of course at the waist area, it should not show that, it's basically to make sure that it looks natural, looks evened out. So that's why we do this way. So let us continue. Now if we notice, right, this point of the, because this is the center front, this is the front, so this point that we're doing is actually the left hip. If we look at it very well, we'll see that it's the left hip, the left side of the hip that we're doing. So we're going to call this the front left hip. Of course, it's this same pattern that we'll use for both the front left hip and the front right hip, but we need to mark it like so. Then we also need to make sure, because at this point we are going to notch it when we are cutting our phone, so we need to mark that point too. So now we cut. So we have gotten the front left hip. Now we are going to do the back. Okay, so now we want to do the back. So we're going to get our measurements again. Okay, so remember her hip is 48, that's 12. Her knee is 40, that's 10. Remember, you're not adding any extra inches, you're just using the actual measurements. her waist is 37, that's 9 1/4. Now if you want it to look more artificial, what you can do, although this particular lady, she already has, she has good measurements, so it will still come out very well. But if, let's say, for someone that doesn't have much statistics and you want it to look more artificial, you want the person's hip line to look more increased, then you can take in some inches from the waist and also take in some inches from the round knee, then it curves more. So that is it. Let's continue. But for this lady, we don't have to do that. Okay, so now that we've gotten our measurements, then we'll still mark the 1 inch away from the waist. Remember that. It's already 2 inches away from the knee at the bottom. Then we mark 4 inches away from the center back, like so. So now at this point, we're going to be doing a little bit of a modification here. We'll come up from and mark 3.5 inches. Sometimes mark 3 inches to 3.5 inches anyway. From this point, from this 2 inches, we mark 3.5 inches up. We mark 3 inches. Let's do 3 inches. We mark 3 inches up. So that's making a total of 5 inches. So now we'll take our 3 inches up, then 3 inches up, then 3.5 inches from the side. You can see how I kept my tape. 3.5 inches from side. Then we connect our points together. So you can see that the back is a bit different from the front. This point that we took off, this point that we marked this way is supposed to be the underbutt. Remember, if you're doing a hip hair, so this point, from this point that there was a difference, that we marked 3 inches up, so it is actually the underbutt of the person. So we're using the underbutt of 15 inches for this lady. That's what it means. So let us continue to record. Remember, we did the front left hip, so this is the back right hip. Getting our two patterns. Now we are going to be cutting it on foam. Now we are cutting it on foam. Remember that we are going to cut two of the back right hip and two of the front left hip to form what we are trying to. Okay, so remember I told you mark the middle point. Just notch the middle point like so. Okay. So this is a 1-inch foam I'm using. I'm using a 1-inch foam. You can actually use a smaller, you can use a 1/2-inch foam, or you can use a 1-inch foam. If you don't want it to be so obvious, you can use a 1/2-inch foam. Though I advise against it. I just prefer the 1-inch foam. So now we've gotten 2 of the back right hip. So now we need to get 2 of the front left hip. Okay, so now that we have cut all our foam, so you can see how it's going to be facing. So this side is going to face this side is going to face the left. This side is going to face the left, while this side will face the right, as we can all see. So we're now going to gum. We're going to gum it now with our candle gum. We're going to gum it up with the candle gum. I hope we all know how to use candle gum. Then we'll show you how it went. Okay, so now we are gumming the foams together. I like to start from the center, then take it both down and up. So make sure you put enough gum that would, it's good to use candle gum because it's fast gluing and it lasts better than any other gum for foams like this. It lasts better and it glues fast, right? So you can be gumming both of them simultaneously. As that one is drying, you're also doing this one, right? So how you will know that it's gum is that it will be strong in the middle. It will be stiff in the middle. So until it's stiff in the middle, don't stop. you can blow it a bit so that it gums faster. Remember, it has to be stiff in the middle. So we can all see how it looks. Like I said, the middle will be stiff. As you're doing it, you need to also check this side whether it's also gummed properly, so that you don't have any issues when you eventually put it. So this one is ready now. So we're going to do the second one like this one, then we'll move on from there. Okay. All gummed up. This is how it looks. You can see how it looks for the two sides of the two hip areas, the two sides of the hip. So now we're going to, of course, we can't leave it this way. We have to even it out. What I mean by even it out is that we have to now trim up the edges up to at least 3 inches. Trim it up, the edges of all the sides, round, right? We'll trim it up. We'll trim it to the end, as into the. We're going to trim it up so that it looks natural. If we put it like this, of course, to be showing that you put something there, but we'll have to trim up all the edges so that it looks, seamless when you put it on your clothes. So you trim it up to at least 3 inches up. This way, like I'm doing it now. Round the sides, around the edges. You can see how it looks. This is how it looks. Okay, so now we're going to cover it up. So there are 2 ways to cover it up. You can actually sew. You can either sew lining, as in use the pattern. Okay, use the pattern, the paper pattern, cut lining. Of course, you leave an extra ½ inch on the side, on the sides and in the center, so that by the time you join, it goes back to the normal size, right? So you can actually use lining and cover it up, or you can you can iron your hairstay on the pad, okay, to cover it up. So that's what we want to do now. Hip pad foam that we've already done. Remember, like I explained, that you would have kept an extra 3 inches to the person's hip line. Like this, my client, her hip line is 48, so of course we made it 51 inches, so that by the time we put the hip foam, it's increases, it balances out on the hip. Okay, so now we want to put the hip pad in. Remember, for if you're doing a hip padded dress, it's usually better to sew the, as in do inside, as in do the inside seams kind of sewing, in the sense that you sew the lining separately, sew the fabric separately, so that it looks like this. Okay, so now we want to put the hip pad on the, it's usually advisable to put it on the lining. Okay, so we open it this way, like so. Now you have to know which one you will put for which area. Okay, now if you look at this, you will see that this side is facing the front of the dress, as in this, the bottom. Now if you look at it, this is the front, this is towards the front of the, this is towards the front. So of course, when you're putting your hip, is the part that will face, this part will face the front. So remember that this is the front hip, so the front hip has to align with the front lining. So you put it this way. And also remember that we started our hip pad from the 1 inch 1 inch after the waist. Okay, so you position it like so. Make sure it's 1 inch after the waist, and then you put. So you place your gum in the middle of the hip pad, like so. Then put it in the middle. Like so. Okay. So this is how it's going to look. Of course, you check whether the gum actually stayed on the hip pad. You can add more. So this is how it looks. You can decide to do a little bit of tacking at the on the to the line, I mean to the fabric, so that it doesn't move at all. So we're going to do this for the second hip, and then we'll show you the end product. So this is the result of the hip padding. This is the dress before we added the hip pad, and this is the dress after we've added the hip pad. I did a collage so that you can see the difference, so you can see how natural it looks. You can see how natural it looks. It doesn't look artificial at all. Thank you for watching. See you next time.